Terrific. All right, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here. It looks like there's 26 of you now, and so delighted to have everybody who wants to come and be part of this community conversation to just come right on in the room. There's plenty of room here, and we can take turns if it gets too crowded and rotate out. My name's Elizabeth Slade, and I am from Public Montessori in Action, which is an organization that began with the goal of ensuring strong Montessori implementation for children, families, the global majority, to try to increase access through public Montessori programs. And I have been collaborating with some Montessori teacher trainers from around both AMS, AMI, MACD accredited trainers to look at the gap that happens between Montessori teacher preparation and Montessori teaching. So it seems like there's a teacher preparation or Montessori educator preparation plan, and then there's the experience of being in the classroom, and whether public or private, that's can be a big transition, especially a large transition for people going into public Montessori classrooms. And so this collection of people got together to look at that gap, to look at what are the things that people are coming into teaching not feeling prepared and ready to do. And so our group began working on some shared tools. And the first shared tool that we worked on is the one that we're here to talk about today, which is the Montessori Educator Self-Reflection Tool. And it's an opportunity to 3 times a year take some time to reflect. So for those of you who are in our audience of now 44, and please do come in the room. Love that people are coming in the room, even if they're not coming on camera, so that when we have our moment to reflect soon, we'll be able to unmute ourselves and talk to each other. But I just want to say, for those people who are here who are Montessori trained, you know that at the foundation of our method is observation. And the way we make the most out of our observations is through reflection. And it's something that in a fast-paced teaching life, sometimes we don't create the time to do, to reflect on our observations, to reflect on our noticings, to reflect on our wonderings, to reflect on things we're curious about. And so creating a Montessori educator's life to reflect is part of helping them move out of what I think of as default mode, right? So that's what we will do if we aren't reflecting. It's just, oftentimes it's how we were educated. The way that we went through our education is in our default mode, right? So if we're not reflecting on this new way of being, then in stressful moments or in just day-to-day moments, we might be going back to a more sort of behaviorist approach to education. So offering times for Montessori educators to actually really reflect on this absolutely lush and glorious method that we have is part of the direct aim of this tool. So for anyone in the room, I wanted to just offer an open moment or in the chat to share about your experience with reflection as a Montessori practitioner. Have you had an opportunity? What has provided for you the opportunity to reflect on your observations or your practice as a Montessorian, whether you're a Montessori leader or teacher or assistant? Yes,
I'll kick off.
We are reflecting on reflections. Go ahead, Melissa.
Being brutally honest, because I would try and reflect on my observations periodically anyway, but the times I would read would be when I'm having a problem, an issue, maybe a lesson isn't working, there's a behavioral challenge. That's when I've really kind of observed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it's when we hit a problem or an obstacle or a barrier that we're like, oh, okay, what's going on here? Thank you. Anyone else in the room care to unmute and share a reflection on reflection? So
I'm just adding Maria to the group. She might like to share her thoughts.
Wonderful. And I see that either Andrea or Andrea has mentioned that the pandemic has provided an opportunity to reflect on practice in a new way, that there's maybe been a little more space to reflect. And then and also in the chat is the idea about observing other colleagues as an opportunity to reflect, and the idea of being more self-aware of your own experience, our own experience, and prejudices, right? Like that isn't exactly right. That when we're looking at implicit bias or unconscious bias, it's really through reflection that we're able to sort of break that down. And the pandemic was a portal for Elise too. Elise, you're gonna have to get in here soon as a co-creator. But Maria and Beth, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Actually, I was going to actually talk about the pandemic. It realize not only the real importance of the need for balance, because when I wasn't working, all of a sudden, but it made me realize how much we were, and that was a huge for me. We're getting really find that place, that right sweet spot of being able to focus on, because I've been doing this for 27 years. So yeah, so I agree. The pandemic was huge in bringing awareness for the need.
Right. And I love the question of like, how will we hold the things that we got out of the pandemic that improved our practice, that, strengthened what we're doing, and how do we hold those when we, return to in-person learning? And as you mentioned, sort of like the schedule, right, that takes up a lot of space. Yeah, wonderful. Great. Any other thoughts from anyone about time to reflect, your experience with reflection as part of our method? Erin is mentioning that reflecting at the end of each day, mostly while cleaning, right? Sort of like that meandering mind of wandering through. And journaling as an option for that. Right, reflection essays. So it's interesting, Donna, that you mentioned that, because as I said at the front of this, so this is a joint tool that was created by Montessori teacher educators, teacher training centers and trainers, both in the United States, in Canada, and in England, and from a coaching perspective. So my work is working with Montessori coaches to support, especially new practitioners, but practitioners, teachers and assistants, and everyone in schools, and particularly public Montessori schools. I got a little feedback there. Did that happen to other people too? Okay, yeah.
Sometimes when we add people, there can be a little dip in the bandwidth, but we've got Andrea on stage now with us.
Wonderful.
Well, I think you turn your camera off. That's fine. You could turn your camera off, and I'll just unmic at any time, as Elizabeth has said.
Yeah. Anyway, just was reflecting on that comment that Donna made about doing these reflection essays in training. And that kind of connects with what Maria was saying about then doing this for 27 years and maybe not having time for those reflection essays anymore, right? So what is our stopgap there between being highly observant and reflective when we're in training, and then becoming really very action oriented and focused on the doing when we are in charge of a classroom or we're working in a school? And so what's our connection there? And so the creation of this tool was one of the pieces that we thought about. Did anyone want to chime in We had some new people in the group. Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Thanks. Because I think this topic is so interesting. I almost feel like, you know, how you mentioned that for many of us, we did not have a Montessori schooling or upbringing. So we've entered Montessori education as educators with more of a traditional background. And my experience in schools, it's almost as though people find it really difficult to shift the paradigm that you start off, you graduate from your training and you're all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and you're observing, you're doing everything right. And then this, like, it's almost like it just kind of fades away, pressure on you to be doing rather than observing. It's almost like an uphill battle. And I think it can like easily slip away, these things that we learned.
Andrea, do you want to chime in? I'm so happy you're on screen and here in the room.
Elizabeth. Yeah, I felt the pandemic just gave me an opportunity to revisit everything. You know, we had to revisit the way we're doing things. We had to revisit the environment. We had to revisit what was really important. What makes Montessori Montessori? It was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the other side of it was all of the opportunities for conversation and communication with other Montessorians. The Montessori community internationally just sort of to provide information and support, and it's been amazing.
And Ellen, you mentioned in the chat the piece about using video to reflect, and I think you mean like video recordings of your classroom that you then watch. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I've been a virtual teacher now since last year, and I've been recording myself on Zoom when I do my lessons. So it's been a really enlightening way of going back. And if I'll have a feeling like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like I connected with my students, or I'll go back and watch myself give the lesson and how the kids are interacting. And I think that's really been really helpful. I'm excited to continue to use that as an observation tool to myself. I can't really use it to observe the students as much, which I'd like to be able to do more, but I do think it's helpful to see myself from an outside perspective when you're not in the moment.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to shift to looking at the tool. What we're hoping to get out of this session is some more crowdsourcing about a tool that could be worldwide, could be widely used in every Montessori community as a support for encouraging that kind of solid reflection. Hey, Letty. On our practice regularly, right? So the idea would be that this tool would be something that everyone in the Montessori community could use 3 times a year. So at the beginning of the school year, when you're fresh and, Melissa, as you said, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you have all these ideas, you're using this reflection tool. And then you're revisiting it in January, you know, to say, ask yourself all those questions again and think about those reflections. And then you're using it at the end of the year. And it even could be a tool that if you sort of have a sense of like, oh, this keeps coming up for me. I really want to focus on that. I really want to make this a vision of how I could be doing things differently. You know, in modern brain science, where we put our attention, that's what grows, right? So when we really attend to something and we make it an intentional decision, then we start, I mean, Montessori knew this over 100 years ago. It's with repetition that we create these pathways in our brain, right? So we think, oh, that's a great idea. And then we get so busy, we don't do it. We don't have that pathway in our brain. But if we're, oh, okay, I'm really going to intentionally do this every day for this week, then we start creating that. So having a nice, strong second period with some of these things. So I'm about to screen share the English version, and the team has well organized the handouts, which is right now in Spanish, it's in traditional Chinese, and it's in simple Chinese. So if anybody is in the group who is understanding English but would like the tool in one of those other languages, that's how far we've gotten. And if you know anybody who speaks any other languages who would like to translate the tool, we're just going to let this go widely into the international Montessori community. Letty, any thoughts before we go looking at the tool? Anything you want to share?
No, I'm actually just excited to see which one, because I jumped in the middle, so I'm not sure what tool you're sharing, but I'm excited to see.
Great. Well, I'm doing my first screen share on this platform. Can you see it?
Ah, yes, that one.
Yeah, this one. So
I love that one.
So this is a tool that's been piloted this spring. And this session is to get some more international eyes on the tool. At the end, I'm going to ask for you to fill out a survey that asks you some questions about it. But the first thing we're going to do is for you to open it up and make a copy of it in whatever language you like, and just take 5 quiet minutes to just fill it out. So before we start taking it apart, I'd love to have you just have an individual experience of it. So if you're having trouble opening it in your preferred language, please put it in the chat. We'll try to problem solve and support you in being able to open it. So they're Google Docs. It's a Google Doc link. It's view only. So you make a copy of it for yourself and then go ahead and write right in the tool. Translating fantastic, and German. Okay, great. I'm going to put my email in here at the end, and then you can get all the languages. Okay, so if anyone's having trouble opening it to do the tool, please chat. Otherwise, we're really going to take some Montessori quiet. We're going to play the silence game and let you fill out this tool. Have a moment of reflection. So if you could put in the chat how much more time you need to complete, then we can all queued up before we start talking about it. Melissa, did you see that Sabrina's asking for help accessing the tool? Okay, and somebody asked about how to fill it in. So there's a key at the top. So you're going to give yourself a 1, 2. 1 means that you're discovering, you're becoming aware of this point. 2 is emerging. You're becoming more intentional about this. And 3 is you're refining. So You're continuing to adapt and grow, but it's becoming more integrated.
If I could just add, Elizabeth, sorry, also, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind, could you mute your microphone? I'm unable to mute you.
I did. I muted it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if you can't see the handout, please scroll down and you'll see some links just under the screen.
Wonderful.
And if you still can't find them, just write a message and I'll reply to you.
Great. Yes, we're all getting used to this new technology where you can pin things places. It's exciting. All right. So how many minutes? Sounds like people are kind of just getting into the tool now. But if you could put a number in the chat of how many more minutes you need to fill it out, that would be great. And I would love for people to actually fill it out so you're experiencing the taking of it before we talk about it. Ellen has boldly suggested 2 to 3 minutes, so we're going to give it 3 minutes and hope we're all finished up around then. Done, you might want to go through and read the questions again and just sort of take a reflective walk through in a meta way about the question. So you read it the first time to answer the questions. If you have time, read to think about the questions themselves, the phrasing of it.
Elizabeth, I put in the chat, but I'm not sure what you think. Yeah, I think because it's going to take to download the document, open it in an editable format, and then write on it, it might be worth just kind of thinking about the answers for now, or maybe scribbling down answers that correspond with the question. Okay, great. Thanks.
We are as we go. All right, Andrea, you put something great in the chat to kick off the conversation. Is it helpful for me to have it screen shared, or everybody's now looking at it themselves? Is it helpful to have it up here? Okay, the jury's out on that.
I think it's better not sharing it, just because then your face is bigger on the screen. I can't speak for everyone, but I think it'd be better without, because we will look at it on another screen.
All right. I'm bigger on the screen. That's intimidating. I should have kept screen sharing. But anyway, as long as everyone, we're good, because we're going to just do a little walk through the tool. It's organized in 3 sections. And the collaborative team, the Teacher Preparation Collaborative, created the questions, and then a subgroup of which Elise Haneke-Stone, who's in our midst, was part of it, went through to kind of figure out how to organize these questions. What are the categories? And a number of the people had taken the Montessori coaching course, which thinks about the Montessori O's. And the Montessori O's are one school, honest talk, and strong system, sort of big central whole school Montessori ideas. So one school is the idea of that we are all interconnected. No one is siloed. It's not that Montessori is only in the classrooms, it's a Montessori school. So our whole school is a place for coaching and being coached, for multi-age grouping, for learning together. And so thinking about how is each guide creating that in their classroom, this idea of one community without splitting, without fissure. And honest talk is the value of this clear and direct communication, that we're really able to respect each other by speaking honestly and directly with one another. And then strong systems kind of speaks for itself, but we all need systems to support what we do. And do we have those systems? Are those systems in place to support our best work? So asking Montessori classroom adults to think through those lenses, to reflect on their practice around, are we one community? Are there honest conversations? And do we have systems going? And in elementary, are those systems shared with the learners? Or are they systems that are more, sort of top down and driving? Or are they creating a collaborative learning structure in the classroom? So we're going to take it in those same chunks by looking at the one school section first and offering any reflections on the questions in the first section. And Andrew, is that where you saw the statements that were the same?
Sorry, so 11 and 16 are the same. No, wait, 11 and I did connect them. 11 and 16, yeah, 12 and 17, 13 and 18.
Great. Can you put this in the
Sure.
chat?
I was just wondering if there were supposed to be other things there, so that's why I was asking. So, but I can do that. Yes.
So you're saying that they're hitting the same idea?
No, they're identical.
They are not identical on mine.
Okay, so I took my page. I had it printed from the booklet that the Discovering the Child sent out.
Okay, maybe try the link down at the bottom.
I think that could be a mistake by our designer. I apologize.
Okay,
We're
so
trying
I'll
to
try the
beautify
link
it into our booklet. I'm going to send two links to the original document that Elizabeth sent me. That's definitely right. So give me 1 second. I will send it in the chat. Apologize.
Well, I'll check the link at the bottom then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the strange error because they're not duplicated in the same place. So I wonder, are there any similar sentences, Elizabeth, or is every statement unique?
Every statement is unique. Maybe I will screen share just for the sheer fun of it.
Okay.
And I actually thought, Andrea, you were saying, and do you mind muting yourself? Because I'm hearing myself talking over since you're unmuted. Here I am encouraging you to unmute, and now I'm asking you to mute. But every statement is different. But what's interesting that I thought you were getting at is that some of them might be driving at the same parts of our practice, which I just always think is really curious. And we did a lot of thinking and talking about how are these two different. They're in two different areas. They're covering something similar. They different. So let's go through it on the big screen where it's in its original version. So the first one, I'm just going to read them out loud. That same page. And somebody asked in the chat, what are we doing? What are we looking at? We're looking at the Montessori Educator Self-Reflection Tool that was created by the Teacher Education Collaborative, which is a group of teacher trainers from the United States, Canada, and England, looking at the gap between training and teaching and how can we create some shared tools for Montessori coaches to use in schools and teacher trainers to use in teacher preparation. And this is the first tool. And so we're sharing it here in the hopes for your thoughts and feedback. I'm going to put a link to a survey in the chat end to collect your individual thoughts about this. But you can see on the screen, so you can see if your tool has other things that aren't there. These are the first 6, is really thinking about how are we conscious about the learners interacting in the environment? Are we treating and speaking to children with respectfully, even when they may be having a hard time? Are observations as objectively as we can? Are we collaborating with others to improve our practice? And are we consciously collaborating with the children and to increase agency? That's the rough, I didn't read them exactly. I thought that'd be terribly boring, but that's sort of the essence of the first 6 questions. And I wonder if there's any either conversation or chat that we want to do about the One School section. It looks like a lot of the duplicates are in lower numbers, so we'll have some fun getting there, and you'll get to read the ones that were hidden and concealed through translation or through virtual moments. All right, well, you can see from those top questions that the essence of it is this reflection on connecting the community within the classroom and connecting to the larger community, the idea that we're collaborating with others and with the children within our classroom. The next section is the honest talk section. And I'll scroll up so you can see the whole rest of it. So I think 12 in one of the others and 11 in one of the others. But so the honest talk section is the idea that we're going to take ownership of our feelings and reactions. To be comfortable with ambiguity and friendliness with error. These are really tough things, right? But are we being reminded that this is an essential part of our practice? To be fully human ourselves. We're not trying to like damp it down and be invisible. We're trying to be present to who we are in the classroom. And do we have strategies when we do get activated? By the way, you might be more familiar with the word triggered, but in a language of reverence or in language of peace, it was recognized that triggered is a word of violence. And so replacing it with activated. That's the idea that something hits you and you're maybe not even coming at it from the frontal lobe because it's connecting to something else, but you are reacting instead of responding, right? So the question being, do you have any strategies for when that happens? That will happen. We're all human. It's going to come up. Someone is going to say or do something, whether it's an adult or a child, that's going to activate us. And do we have strategies for what to do? And stating things from a positive point of view, saying what we do, engaging in honest conversation about implicit bias, both our own and others. So am I brave? Am I able to be brave up and to, voice something when I see something? And am I brave enough and vulnerable enough to other people, what they have to say? These are how changes will be made. If we're all, if we are polite and we aren't willing to venture into honest talk, then things aren't said. We aren't really able to have an open dialogue that will impact the lives of children, that are the learners are the ones who will benefit from this honest talk. And then the next one is about speaking to and not about others. So this is the idea that in school, there's the speaking, the idea of gossip and talking behind people's backs, that we really want to eliminate that. That's not something that is part of being in a Montessori classroom, so it shouldn't be part of something about being in a Montessori school, right? So how are we holding it that we're going to bring honest talk and that we're going to resolve conflicts as soon as we possibly can? Number 12 is one of my favorites, which is I regard those with whom I have difficulty as offering me the greatest opportunity to grow. That instead of thinking of that person as a problem, we are thinking of them as our greatest teachers, right? And so I remember students fondly from my teaching years. Those are the students I learned the most from, right? I grew the most through the student who worked Chicago sweatshirt with the hood on every single day and wouldn't come out of the hood, right? I'm a connection person, as you can tell by me saying, come on, everybody come into this room so we can connect, right? And so, I got so activated by the student hiding inside the bowl sweatshirt and really had to grow who I was in order to serve that learner. And she recently connected with me in her 30s. I'm old, but she recently reached out to find me. And it was as meaningful a connection for her as it was for me. We both grew a tremendous amount through our time together. And so just having that as a point of reflection, that we're going into it with that mindset that, oh, wow, this is going to be a wonderful opportunity for me to grow skills and abilities and ways of being that I wouldn't get to grow if it weren't for this other adult or this learner that I'm working with. Any thoughts or comments as we're trucking along in honest talk here? Briefly, is there something you wanted to add there? Here's Michelle. Love seeing your faces. I do have now. There's a lot of people are inside their sweatshirt hoods. I'm okay with it, but I do like seeing your face. Michelle, did you have a thought to add to any of this?
Wrong button. I find this to be really helpful. I especially like that the honest talk is also the things you say to yourself. Verbally speaking to other people. So I definitely wanted to share appreciation for that.
Thank you so much. It is the hidden element, right? Our self-talk really drives our outside talk. There can't be a dissonance between how we are with ourselves. That we don't have, they say grace and courtesy. Grace is how we are with ourselves, and courtesy is how we are with others. And we need to have some grace with ourselves, right? And so looking at that as a point of reflection, because otherwise that is buried and it's going to affect our courtesy in those. It's going to come out because we aren't really holding the full element of grace and courtesy. So thanks for pointing that out. All right, so then it's respectful communication with families and recognizing that's an element of our work as well to build those. And then the last piece is really focused on systems, right? Is how are we maintaining all of this in the classroom, that we have this sense of order and organization so that things can be calm, that we're supporting our learners in how they're growing as well. And we are consciously avoiding punishments and rewards, that we're living inside of that constructivist method. And I love the idea, and this was an ad from someone on the team about the classroom agreements that we make, especially in elementary, and allowing those to guide the corrections, not being the person that's policing things. So that's a system to have in place, and then a system for connecting with families, and a system for the, the big topic right now, post-pandemic, is SEL, right? The social emotional learning piece. So do we have a plan for that, and a system to support that? And do we have procedures and routines that support that aspect? And then thinking about our lesson planning and our systems and structures around that are, especially in elementary and adolescent programs, are inclusive with a balance. But certainly even in the first plane of development, that there's a balance between the adult who initiates and the child who initiates, even if it means the child is initiating it by constantly observing other children who are doing a particular material. And then thinking of observation as a system that we need to commit to. All right, so I'm going to stop the screen share now that we made it through the multiple questions being the same. And I think we've sorted that out. I can also put the direct links to the documents that are all up on my screen in the various languages in the chat. In fact, maybe I'll do that right now so you can pop into the very Google Doc that I'm in right this minute. I'm going to put it in the chat. I also have queued up in the chat the survey, so I'm going to click that so it doesn't go away. And then here's the tool. All right, hopefully that link is different, and it really did copy, so that you can get right into the English version. And if anyone wants the direct link to the others that have each question being a different wording, I would love your thoughts, though, to pursue the idea that are these two questions getting at the same underlying part of our practice? Or since we're trying to keep it to one page, have we gotten the full expanse of sort of our Montessori method on this page? What's missing? What's double? So we have just 3 minutes left. I would love it if everyone clicked the survey. You don't have to do it immediately, but if you click the link to the survey, either where I just put it in or other places, it will be open on your screen, and you can take 5 minutes to give some responses. The team is meeting up this summer. This tool was piloted in a number of places across the United States and Canada, and actually a few places in London. And so all of those users are using the same survey to give their thoughts on the tool. And now combined with all of your thoughts about the tool will give us some good data. The team's coming together again in July to look at this, to strengthen the tool even further, and then to continue translating it, so that at the front of this next year, as we're switching off of the sort of virtual experience that we were in, back to learning, we have this tool in place for us to use it. Okay, good. We have some thoughts in the chat here. Guidance and support to help new Montessorians understand these concepts. Classroom agreements for the toddler room. It's a peace promise. Be kind, be helpful, be safe. Right. How to let those simple ideas guide that. Right. So that's the Montessori concept of preparation over correction, by preparing everyone to do their best. So there doesn't need to be a correction. There's this guiding thing of, oh, here's our agreement. So we get to reflect back. Is that kind? Is that helpful? In my elementary classroom, the student who was in the bowls thing reflected back to me. It was on our mirror in our classroom, and it said, "Is reflect, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?" Before speaking, right? These are three things we asked ourselves in this 9 to 12 classroom. Before speaking, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Right? And it was always good guidance. I like that it was in the mirror for all of us. And then Letty is pointing out, I regularly collaborate with others to improve my practice. Take that statement and ask, what are some examples of what this would look like? What are some indicators? I meet with my teaching team once a week. Oh, making it more specific. I love that idea. I meet with my teaching team once a week to talk about key students, or I meet once a month with my teaching team. We talk about work samples and data. Nice. So making it ultra specific about how we might collaborate. Pick one to separate and focus. Nice. I love the app sign. That's cool. Wonderful. We are 1 minute away, and I wonder if anyone wants to unmic who's in the room and say anything, or if anyone has last thoughts of things to put in the chat. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate those who came into the room, because it's called On Stage. How terrifying. So thank you for being on stage in this community conversation about how we can create more tools for Montessorians around the world to strengthen our global Montessori practice in schools everywhere.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It was wonderful.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. And Melissa, I think it's true. There's a session after us. We aren't to linger. We're just say goodbye and head out to create space in the room for the next session. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure who's following straight away, but that is our best practices. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
That was in my training session. Is not,
yeah, you're right.
I make the announcement. We aren't lingering. But I was going to put my email in the chat. I'll do that right this minute for anybody who's still here.
Yes, and we will be sending out an email after the conference with recordings, and they'll be available up to 2 weeks after. So if anyone missed anything.
Wonderful. My email is in the chat. I would love to hear from any and all of you about language prospects or future thoughts as you go on and you're like, oh, I didn't say this, or now I thought of this, or maybe it's fall and you're doing this with a group of teachers and you have a thought or a question, or your teachers have a good idea. The survey link is open. You can go back to it. I made it so that you can go back to your survey even a year from now and add to it and change it. So thank you.